From the air, the Palouse Hills are wide open. There are no barriers here, except the hills themselves. Even the state line isn't much of a barrier. It's just an imaginary line. But sometimes imaginary lines are enough to separate people, whether it be residents of one state from another, farm families from city dwellers, or heterosexuals from homosexuals. Some people on the Palouse say they don't know any gays or lesbians, and that lack of knowledge is a barrier. It leads to misunderstanding. After all, people do tend to fear the unknown. But there are gay people on the Palouse. They're part of the community. Gays and lesbians live here, work here, and they go to school here. You're about to meet some of them. These are people who are out of the closet and out in the middle of nowhere.
I must have been born in the right.
If you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's best to have a pickup truck and a friendly dog. Emma Carroll and Michelle Ward do, and they have an apartment in a farmhouse at the end of a long country road. Michelle is a musician. She plays guitar in several local bands and teaches classical guitar. Emma works at Washington State University as a herds manager in the College of Agriculture. That is, whenever she isn't off fishing.
I love to fish, and most of the times when I get a day off, everyone else has to work, so I wind up going by myself.
Emma and Michelle have been together for 7 years.
I can't say that I've ever been happier than I am now, especially after meeting her, because we have so many things that we like to do and that we share together. It's really nice to have a real special friend that you can play with and you know, cry in front of and just be silly and just share a lot of common things.
I need a holster for my remote.
3 years ago, they exchanged vows and rings in a commitment ceremony. That's as close as a gay couple can get to getting married.
People see my ring on my hand and ask me, oh, are you married? Or, oh, do you have a boyfriend? Or whatnot. And some of those questions, it kind of, the first thing that pops into your mind is, okay, how do I answer this? You still get that anxiety attack as to, oh, am I not going to say the right thing? Are these people going to hate me the rest of my life just because I'm telling them the truth?
Uncertainty about public reaction to the relationship may be a concern for these two women, but they've found the Palouse to be an accepting place to live.
People are all have different ways they live. Some people may fall into what is considered a more mainstream gay lifestyle. A lot of people don't.
Doug McGarvey has lived on the Palouse for 2 years. He works at Washington State University as a research associate in the Institute of Biological Chemistry. He works with plant enzymes to learn how they function and to find out how they do what they do.
And then this goes on to form, gets hydroxide, it forms menthol, carbiol.
Doug came to WSU after attending college in Boulder, Colorado and Santa Barbara, California.
I decided when I came here that, well, I want to change that right from the start. I'll be out when I come here. And that's been much better for me as far as being open and being able to share a part of my life with the people that I work with, people that I know.
That openness helps break down the stereotypes his co-workers might have about him and what some people call the gay lifestyle.
Well, I'm really not sure what the gay lifestyle is, or whether it's one lifestyle. It's, I think it is somewhat of a myth.
A Sunday morning church service, and the sound of the choir floats through the Moscow neighborhood. Could this be part of the gay lifestyle?
There must be a God somewhere.
Lynn Unger is pastor of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Palouse. She is just one of the voices in the choir, but as pastor, her single voice provides the sermon.
The efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world. The efforts of all of us are needed to create this community. to create this very special place.
I ended up in Moscow, Idaho because of the church. Since there are a limited number of Unitarian Universalist churches and a limited number of those that are looking for a minister at any given time, the number of places that I had to consider as far as where I was going to be living was limited too, and Moscow ended up being the place for me, or me the person for them, depending on how you think about it.
As pastor, Lynn is called on to conduct everything from weddings to funerals to fundraisers. And as leader of this congregation, she is a role model.
Maybe not in the sense of a role model of, I want to be a lesbian when I grow up, but I think for the kids in the church to see that this is who I am, and it's not really a big deal, and I'm a nice person who tells them good stories, and somebody who's willing to listen to them and cares about them, and that they realize over time that I'm a lesbian, that when people are talking about those people, the homosexuals, that they're talking about somebody that they know and hopefully like and respect.
This is a church that affirms diversity in both people and ideas. So here, there is no conflict between being a pastor and being a lesbian.
I think ministry is about telling the truth, that religion is about telling the truth, finding out what we think the answers are, what the big truths are. And I think that gay people who have chosen to be out know something about telling the truth that most people do not know. We know what it costs to tell the truth. We know just how hard it is, and we know what it costs not to tell the truth. And so, in that sense, I think as much as anything, my being a lesbian is an asset to my ministry rather than a liability, because I have that particular kind of experience about what it means to tell the truth.
Chris Carter works on a 1,200-acre farm. Originally from Washington, D.C., he spent 5 years in the Navy before finding his way to the Palouse. Chris remembers it was his boss's wife who asked that fateful question.
She walks right up to me and she goes, "So Chris, are you gay or what?" And it was like, yeah. and really that's the first time that we really dealt with it out here. And it was positive then, and it's been positive ever since.
Chris and Ben Skillen have been together for 3 years. Ben's a student at Washington State University studying environmental science. This relationship got off to a rocky start when Ben fell asleep at a movie on their first date. Chris is classic rock and roll. Ben is technopop. Chris's friends are farmers. Ben's friends are students.
Well, I know nobody ever thought that we would make it this far.
All right, everyone thinks of us as a very odd couple.
Odd couple or not, these two have made their relationship work.
With all the other little differences that we have, I think the things that are most important to me are there in abundance. And
We're both willing to talk things out. I mean, there's a saying that say most gay relationships last until the first argument, and we're way beyond that. We're both willing to sit down and talk about things, and I like that.
Chris gets credit for coming up with an idea for a community service project for the Inland Northwest Gay People's Alliance that's brought a lot more visibility to the organization. The group joined the Adopt a Highway program to clean up litter along a stretch of Idaho's Highway 95 north of Moscow.
we called the people down in Lewiston, and they hemmed and hawed about it a little bit, only because they were worried about the signs. They knew right off the get-go that they were going to have a lot of vandalism on those signs, which kind of has come to pass. We signed up for another term, and I think everybody kind of enjoys getting out there and doing it and seeing, you know, a positive symbol out there, you know, that you can take pride in.
To be really out in the middle of nowhere, you have to hitch a ride with Susan Baumgartner, but fasten your seatbelt, it's a bumpy ride. Susan calls this remote cabin home. It comes with a solar panel to power her computer. But for the most part, this is not luxury living.
The cabin is sort of carefully divided into sections. This is the kitchen. This is a little two-burner propane stove that I used to cook on. All my books, dictionary, all the stuff I have to do. This is the little Macintosh. Let's climb up the ladder. And I'm right up here in bed. This is the outhouse that my grandfather built. And it used to be at the other farm, and they hauled it out here for me so that I would have plumbing.
Susan is a writer, and while she works part-time as an English instructor at the University of Idaho, she spends her writing time here.
A wonderful place for writing. It's quiet, no distractions, no telephone. So it's really, you're out here, there's nothing else to do. It's very focused. You can wander around muttering to yourself all the time with the book constantly in your head. So it's just been really good in terms of productivity.
She used to think she was meant to be a hermit because she felt she didn't fit in with society.
I didn't know I was gay. And so I just, thought, I think I'm insane because I'm not like anyone else. And so if I stay away from people as much as possible, maybe no one will notice. I can just sort of keep creeping along the edges of life. I love writing fiction. That's my favorite thing. And I've written tons of novels. And of course, you always have to have the obligatory sex scene in a novel. And I had no idea how to write that. I didn't even know how to write two characters being in love because I'd never actually been in love before. I'd tried, I dated, but there was never that incredible chemistry that happens. And so now I know that my fiction is so much more real because I've actually lived a life as opposed to just being this kind of detached observer.
Since coming out, Susan has shed much of her reclusive behavior. The cabin is no longer a place to hide. It's a place to live and create in an area she calls home. She is, after all, the 5th generation of Baumgartners to live on this land.
Because I think I had this image for a long time, that, well, if I even dreamed of being gay, I'd have to move to San Francisco. I'd have to live this very intensive urban life and live in a gay ghetto where I'm totally surrounded by gay people. It never occurred to me that a gay person can just go on the exact same life I've always had. I'm still writing. I still really love being out here, having the solitude. So it really hasn't changed, made this massive change in my life, except I'm happy. And that's been nice.
I'm here because of the quality of life. I like this place.
Jerry Schutz is a native of the Palouse, too. He grew up in Moscow. After high school, he left for 6 years. He says he was afraid of being a gay person in a small town. But he returned to Moscow, and now he runs his own business and owns his own home. He now calls life here idyllic, but he has concerns for local kids who are going through the difficult times he remembers.
Educators are just now starting to learn that people don't wake up one morning and just say, oh, I'm gay. It seems to be a series of events that comes through your life. And when you get to the point where you have to start recognizing as an individual that these things are going on, there's no one to turn to. And, as I know when I first came out, I felt like I was all alone in the world.
I dropped out of Moscow High School in my junior year. I would have graduated in '83, the same year as Jerry.
Kathy Sprague has more in common with Jerry Schutz than just being classmates. She's also gay, and she also runs her own business in Moscow called Safari Comics. Kathy also remembers how desperately confusing it was for a young gay person, and how little support and understanding was available.
Now that I have a perspective, I realize that a lot of the problems, it came down to, one, I wasn't accepting myself, and number two, there was no one there to help me. My family, because I was suicidal, they were sending me to see a private counselor, and she came back just a year ago. She's now a member of PFLAG. One of her own children has come out, and she came and she apologized, and she said, it never occurred to me until my own son came out, and she was a trained licensed counselor.
Kathy calls herself a small-town kid and a fighter, and she says she hopes to make a difference in how gay kids are treated.
I guess that's the point that really angers me, is it's not any easier now for the kids. inside the system, there's nothing for them. They have to find the gay community on their own, and a lot of them don't.
High school can be tough for kids who are gay. It's hard for them to find the answers to the questions they have about their sexuality. And it can be hard to fit in.
Basically, high school was a miserable experience.
Kelly Anderson dropped out of high school between his junior and senior year.
And I did have to go through walking down the hall hearing people yell out faggot and queer and gay wad, various little terms that I'm sure we have all heard throughout our lives.
Learning to deal with name-calling is just the first lesson in a gay person's survival guide. For many gay teens, survival will depend on overcoming psychological abuse, emotional abuse, and even physical abuse. It's not surprising that young adults like Tabitha Simmons hope they can help other gay teens, especially since so few others will.
Just being out there and proud of who I am, not because I'm gay, but because I'm me, and being gay is a part of me, and that doesn't make me a bad person.
One of the results of discrimination and persecution against gay people is the sense of pride they develop in who they are. Call it gay pride.
All across America, folks are talking. The words are coming out of their lips, they're saying lesbian and gay.
In June of 1994, Palouse area gays and lesbians and their supporters gathered for their first ever Gay Pride March. It was as much a celebration as it was a statement for human rights.
These are the best of times. They are the times we're living in. The times they're changing, we're turning this country around. These are the best of times, they are the worst of times, but they're the times we're living in. And the time is now to turn this country around.
Members of Latah Nez Perce Voices for Human Rights believe there is value and dignity in all human beings and are opposed to the bigotry and discrimination faced by homosexuals.
And I think this is just a fabulous gathering. It's wonderful to be here, to get strength from people, to feel that there's this community out here that was never there before. And I suppose that's sort of what I take strength from, is no matter what happens on this, there's a community here that's not going to go away.
For gay men and lesbians living on the Palouse, life is filled with regular events. Going to work or school, paying bills, going fishing or picnicking with friends. But these everyday activities become painful when they are accompanied by the threat of discrimination.
Each time one of us comes out, every time we speak out, we're all that much closer to being free.
And I'd like to finish with a quote from gay rights activist Michelangelo Signorelli in response to the righteous right. He says, "You say we're coming for your children, and you're right, we're coming for your queer children. We are your queer children. We will not allow you to force future generations into the closet. We will not allow you to abuse them in that way. We will not allow you to push us all back into the closets. We are never going into the closet."
These are the best of times, they are the worst of times, but they're the times we're living in. The time is now to turn this country around. Oh, the time is now to turn this country around.